All right, good neighbors of Lee. It's 9 o'clock. Groundhog yesterday predicted an early spring for us. The maple trees are being tapped. The Red Sox equipment truck leaves Fenway Park for Florida on Monday. And so it's time again to do the business of the town. And so I'd like to call this meeting of the 2024 deliberative session to order. And thank you very much for participating. I wonder if you would join me to start the meeting in the pledge of the flag. If you would stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a few shopkeeping things. We have facilities, restroom facilities right in the hallway. We have some daycare in the back, I think, today. So exits are clearly marked. I'll introduce myself as Don Quigley. I'm the moderator. And by way of introductions here, we'll start over on this side. Denise Duval is our assistant town administrator. Andy Robertson, our town administrator. Rebecca Hawthorne, our chair of the select board. Katrine Casper, also a select board. Did I get the chair?
I'm the chair, she's the vice chair.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. These things change so fast. And we have Liz Stone over here, our town clerk. And town clerk will be our scribe for the day. She'll be taking the notes. And so we may ask you several times to clarify your statements today so that Liz can, in fact, get them properly in our records of the day. Purpose of this meeting is to explain, discuss, and debate each of the presented warrant articles put forth by the town officials or by petition of town voters. These articles may be amended or passed as written and move forward to the official ballot, which will be decided by voters in the second session of the polling place at the Public Safety Complex on Tuesday, March the 12th. That's the second session of this session today. Each member of the deliberative body who wishes to speak, amend, or vote on these articles should be previously registered to vote. So if you want to vote today, make sure you have a voter card. So if you have not acquired a voter card, please go to the back of the room and get a voter card at this time. I don't necessarily, as moderator, conform to the Robert's Rules of Order. Rather, we'll try to guide a civil and orderly debate toward a productive rendering of these articles until such time as I am properly overruled by the body. I do reserve the right to rule any person out of order and request they yield the floor or be removed in that capacity. Any person presenting an article or wishing to speak or amend an article is required to come to the microphone, if able. State clearly their name and address, and wait to be recognized by the moderator. All remarks from a recognized person would be directed to the moderator. Moderator will then direct any questions to town officials, department heads, or other persons. Warrant articles will be presented, read by a member of the select board or a committee chair, or a head of a department here in town. Presenter will be recognized as the first to speak on that article once it's presented. Floor will then be open for consideration by the body. Motions to amend an article can be made by registered voters. If seconded, the amendment can be discussed and voted. However, we are limited by New Hampshire RSA 40, paragraph 13, that no article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of that article. This restricts amendment to word changes, which can help clarify the article in the positive, or which change the dollar amount to be appropriated. Voting on amended articles. When discussion is finished, when the question is called by the body, moderator will put forth the question forward to the voter to ask for a show of voter cards. If the vote is closed, the moderator will call for a count. Prior to the hand count, If 5 registered voters request a secret ballot, the paper ballot will be distributed and collected for the count by the ballot clerks. After the article is passed, there will be a motion made to restrict reconsideration of the article. If seconded, this will be voted on. This routine action should follow each article to ensure that no changes can take place later in the meeting after other articles are presented or some voters have left the room. Now we have a few slides on the screen over here. I've asked our town administrators to read through those with you. Sort of instructions for the day goes along with it.
Very well. As Don mentioned, these are just information regarding the protocol for the meeting and warrant articles. As he has already informed you, the warrant articles may be amended subject to limitations. Wording is prescribed by law. If the wording is prescribed by law, they cannot be amended. I don't believe we have any of those on the warrant today. Warrant articles as amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote. No warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. The legislative body can make other changes, including changing the dollar amount of an appropriation. An appropriation, as everyone is probably aware, is the amount of money authorized to be expended for a specific purpose. The amount of an appropriation may be amended, however, the purpose of the appropriation may not be changed. No new purposes can be introduced that were not in the posted warrants or that were not disclosed or discussed at the budget hearings. Purpose is defined as a goal or aim to be accomplished through the expenditure of public funds. A line on the budget form posted with the warrant or the form submitted to the Department of Revenue Administration or an appropriation contained in a special warrant article shall be considered a single purpose for the purpose of this meeting. The term raise and appropriate, as defined by New Hampshire RSA 32:3, indicates the source of revenue. This means funding from any source of revenue, not just general taxation. Appropriate is defined as authorization of expenditure of a particular sum for a particular purpose, i.e. the authorization to spend municipal funds for the specified purpose. And that wraps up the housekeeping slides.
Thank you very much, Andy. We'll get on with the articles. Article 1 in the warrant is not something we're going to debate today. By statute, it will be conducted only at the polling place on March 12th, and that is our list of candidates. So they'll be voting at that time for a select board position, a moderator position, supervisor of the checklist position, trustee of the trust funds position, cemetery trustee position, and advisory budget committee, 2 positions, and you'll be voting on those at the polling place. So we're going to start with our deliberation today on Article 2. And so we're going to ask Katrin Casper, Chair of the Select Board, to introduce Article 2 by reading the article. And then we're going to have a presentation following that article about the subject of the article. So, Katrin.
I'm going to start off by making a motion to amend. It's just a change in the number of amount. So, is that
They can't quite hear, so maybe we'll just spin that thing a little.
all right? We'll talk louder. Do you want to read the whole thing first? Okay. All right. I'm going to first read it as it is, and then I will read it with the motion that we're going to do. Warrant Article 2, New Town Building, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $1,700,000 for the purpose of designing, engineering, building, and equipping a new municipal office building, which includes site work, and to authorize the insurance of not more than $1,400,000 of bonds or notes for this project in accordance with the provision of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33(1). I don't know what is that?
I think you can skip the
Thanks. This is not my
Latin's on.
language. As amended, to authorize the select board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, and/or aid, and other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, to authorize the select board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity other terms thereof. And to authorize the select board to take any other actions or to pass any other vote relative thereto, including but not limited to withdrawing $300,000 from the town buildings capital reserve fund, and to further raise and appropriate an additional sum of $35,000 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. The select board recommends this article, requires a 3/5 ballot vote majority to pass, estimated tax impact of 3 cents. Now,
So that's Article 2. By way of discussion for Article 2, I think you want to propose an amendment.
I do, and I apologize to make you also do this again. I make a motion to amend the warrant article as follows. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate sum of up to $1,900,000, it's 8, mistake typo. So $1,800,000 for the purpose of designing, engineering, building, and equipping a new municipal office building, which includes site work to authorize the issuance of not more than $1,400,000 of bonds or notes for this project in accordance with the provision of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1, as amended, and to authorize the select board to apply for, obtain, accept federal, state, and/or aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said projects, to authorize the select board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity other terms thereof, and to authorize the select board to take any other actions or to pass any other vote relative thereto, including but not limited to withdrawing, and here's the difference, $400,000 from the town buildings capital reserve fund, and to further raise and appropriate an additional sum of $35,000 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. The select board recommends this article, requires a 3/5 ballot vote majority to pass. So again, the
Excuse
number
me.
changes.
Is there support for the amendment?
Can I just
Second for the amendment.
verify, because I made a mistake when I said it.
Oh, please do.
So I just want to verify that it is $1,800,000 and not the other number I stated, and it's an amount of $400,000 that's changing from the $300,000. There we go.
Support for the amendment? Second for the amendment?
Second.
Hearing a second for the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment proposed? Would you like clarification on it, Rebecca?
And we'll have a presentation right before we
Okay, well, let's plow some ground on this amendment before the presentation if we could.
Okay.
Could you explain a little the rationale for your amendment?
Yes, so in looking further into what will be paid for and what is not, we wanted to make sure that we have enough money to do the project in full. We don't want to have to come back and ask for more money right away. So we are trying to make sure there's enough to include things outside the original scope. And when the numbers were looked at, it looked like this would be a wise choice.
Thank you.
I don't know how to.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes,
could I add just a financial note and a
part of the discussion of the amendment, sure.
Actually, it is not specific to the amendment, so maybe I should put it off.
Okay, so we'll hold off on that for now.
It's specific to the financing and the tax impact.
I think that would be relevant to the amendment.
So,
Let me
can we-
start, you could overrule me if I...
go ahead.
Could you move to the financial impact slide?
Excuse me, hold up just a minute. This is a little awkward because, the body here hasn't really heard much about this project yet, and now we're amending the article relative to it.
Right, which is,
And so I would like to postpone this amendment until we have a presentation about what this article entails, if that's okay with the body. And so, and I think I can do that. So, I would like to now hold this amendment, and as part of the discussion, have a presentation about this project to the town. So we have an amendment on the floor that's been seconded, and just because I believe that people in the body need to hear more about this project before we can discuss the amendment. I would like to go there first.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can I discuss financial impact at this point, Mr.
Okay, please read the financial impact as part of the discussion.
Okay. One of the things that I think is a little misleading about the warrant article 2 is the tax impact. Per vote of the town last year, we add the tax impact to each warrant article starting this year. The tax impact for the first year of this project, if passed, would be about 3 cents. That's because in the first year, we only make an interest payment. The interest payment that you see in the warrant article is calculated at $35,000. That's probably a little bit higher. The bond bank calculated that first year's interest at 5% in case the interest rate fluctuates. At their most recent bond sale, the actual bond rate was 3.44%. Just wanted to clarify that. And if we could move to the next slide. This is just about indecipherable on the hard copy of the PowerPoint slides, but we have sought a 20-year bond payment schedule through the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank. Have cleared this with bond counsel, and this is the schedule that we're looking at for the bond. As you can see, it's 20 years, first year 5%, ensuing years are estimated at 3.44. We'll move to the next slide. I have a very simple lease comparison, comparing lease versus building. I will say right from the get-go that the maintenance expense lines for the bill or the lease are not particularly accurate. I found a number of matrices you can use to calculate maintenance costs for 16-year-old buildings like the Daly building and for new buildings. Pretty much all of them put the estimated maintenance costs somewhere between $17,000 and $20,000 a year. We have never spent that kind of money on maintenance at our present building, and I can't imagine that we would on a new building either. I filled the lines in. The 1154 column that you see in there is what we're presently paying our heating and cooling people. They do a spring and fall maintenance tune-up. They charge us $1,154 a year for that. Under the lease option, I included a couple of bump-ups just because of the age of the building. And in the early years, I also included actual expenses that we've had beyond the 1154. But if you look at this, you can see if we kept the lease for an additional 20 years, for the total time that we've been in the Daly building, we pay a little over $1.2 million. There's no guarantee that we can keep the lease beyond year 9 at the Daly building. That's the present contract gives us initial 3 years plus 2 renewals of 3 years.
That's your report, Andy?
That's my report.
Okay. So we'll now at this time have a presentation by Carino, I believe, construction company about the project. I know to a lot of folks in here, this is maybe the first time you've heard about this project, so we're going to listen carefully to what's being proposed. So please, the floor is yours. You can do that one or this one. Come to this one if you like.
Sure. Good morning. First off, thank you for allowing our team to come in and discuss the new Town of Lee new town offices. A little background on the project. Actually, I'll do introductions first. My name is Ben Carino. I'm one of the partners of Carino Construction. I will oversee the whole design through construction period of this project. To my left is Stephanie Castoli. She's leading the pre-construction and the overall construction from the Carino office. Neil Raposa is with Civil Consultants. Civil Consultants is the structural and civil engineers of the project. And Evan Nolan is with Port One Architects. He is uploading our design. So we'll do a brief introduction to the actual project that we've designed, a little background for anybody who doesn't understand design-build process. Through a competitive qualification and bid process, Carino Construction was selected by the town of Lee to lead the effort to plan, prepare, design, and hopefully build the new town offices for Lee. What we have designed right now is a 5,200 square foot building. We've gone through several different floor plans and renditions. As of Monday this week, we feel we're at a great place in design, and now we'd like to show you what your new town offices could be.
Is it okay if I speak over here so I can refer to the, can everybody hear me?
If you want to, bring that microphone over in front of where you're standing.
Sure.
You can sneak through there, yeah. Use the floor microphones. Give extra cord just for that.
That's great. Okay, how's that? Thanks, Ben. Evan Mullen with Portland Architects. Want to thank you for being here today and allowing us to be part of this process. It's been a privilege to work with the select board and get feedback at some of the public review sessions. We've worked, as Ben mentioned, we've worked with the select board in both in the public meetings and outside of that, gathering information that you had leading up to the point where we are today. So we designed the building based on the program that was given to us from the select board, that again was based on information that they had generated over the years. So what we're proposing is a straightforward 98 by 56 square building for just under 5,500 square feet. It's all one-story, slab-on-grade construction, 4 exterior walls, conventionally framed wood pre-engineered cold attic, vented attic space. All of the program again is on one level, and the common theme that we kept hearing throughout the design and planning process was that there was a need for privacy and security. So we've oriented the interior spaces around access to the front lobby for the public, and then secure points off of that lobby into the interior of the building so that the people who are, the staff and the department people who are working there are secured from the public access lobby, but there is access into the interior of the building. So what you're seeing here is a conceptual render of what the building could look like from the exterior. I'll let Neil speak more about the site design and how the building is oriented and where, but it's just for your reference, the site plan concept is just over to the right side of the page here, and the north arrow is just out of view. Facing this direction is north, so the building is oriented on an east-west axis for optimal passive solar and future potentially active solar as well. I'll flip to the floor plan. Okay, so maybe a little bit difficult to read from back where you are. I'll just run through the interior spaces quickly. As I mentioned, the interior space is organized around the public access lobby, which is right here. And from the lobby you have access to the town clerk, the assistant town administrator, and sort of lobby window for planning, zoning, and building. Again, to the point of privacy and security, it was requested that we have a more private lobby that is separate from the town clerk, but accessible from the front lobby. So that's what you're going to see just to the right of the interior vestibule here. And I'm going to point out some secure access points to the interior. Here. Here. Just to the right side of the building, which is the east side, there's also access that could be controlled by planning, zoning, and building that would be secure from the rest of the interior of the building. But the feedback was that they get a lot of foot traffic from homeowners, builders, developers who are coming in to discuss their plans. And so it's easier for them to have direct access to that part of the town department. So this is the public access over here on the right, which again could be secured in a number of different ways. They could open the door manually, it could be card reader access, it could be open during normal business hours, and then there's a secure point further in on the interior of the building that would prevent people from having access further into the building here. The town administrator and assistant town administrator are located off the, close to the front lobby, just over here. Finance just to the left of that. And then on the other wing of the building, the west side, there's again another public access lobby that would be secured from the rest of the interior that could be controlled similarly to the door over there on the right. In other words, it could be open during normal business hours. It could be even open during after hours, but people who have access to that would not have access to the rest of the interior of the building, but they would have access to the larger conference room here and break room and bathroom here. So I'll just point out again that the way we laid out the program was to take advantage of the exterior walls for the offices and other meeting areas, and then try to obviously keep the support spaces on the interior, IT, storage, bathrooms, things like that, just to take advantage of daylighting and views to the exterior for some of the office spaces. In the back left corner, there's a rec storage that was requested, so that would just have access from the exterior. It'd be an unconditioned space, but it was suggested to us that they would need as much storage as they can, and so we provided that for them there. That's pretty much the rundown. I'll show you the exterior elevations.
Could I interrupt just for a moment, Evan? Yeah, I think one of the things that Evan has really emphasized with the select board and department heads is that the interior floor plan is not cast in bronze, and when you see office titles or storage areas, those are certainly fluid and have the ability to be changed. So I just don't want people getting caught up in the, questioning why is there a select board office in the corner when it's quite likely there will not be a select board office in the corner, that type of thing.
Thank you, Andy. That's a really good point. We worked through several iterations of the floor plan layout as recently as just a couple of days ago, and that's where we are right now. So thank you, Andy, and to your point, we have 4 exterior walls, we have some circulation throughout, we have the program elements that were requested, and of course the configuration of those spaces could vary depending upon further input. So again, straightforward 1-story construction, gable end roofs, portico over the main entrance. Nothing too exciting here, looking at the back side of the building and the east end. If you recall the east end, that's the access to the planning zoning building side of This is a site plan, so I will let Neil speak to this, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions related to design, and Stephanie and Ben will answer any questions related to construction.
Thanks, Evan. My name is Neil Raposa with Civil Consultants. We're engineering, surveying,
You might want to move just a little closer, or bring that mic in.
All right. How's that? Okay. Like I said, my name is Neil Raposa with Civil Consultants. We're an engineering firm out of South Berwick, Maine. But we have been doing work in Lee and with Lee for several decades. This particular project is exciting to bring these town offices into reality, so we're not dealing with leased spaces here in town anymore. And we do have the unique opportunity for this project to be able to do this construction and develop this land that is already owned by the town and available, and it's land that lends itself fairly well to the development that's proposed. As Evan said, the building orientation was kind of guided by the architecture and get the passive light use out of it. Currently, there's a new entrance proposed on 155, which will also necessitate the reduction in the size of the entrance on the current annex in the old town hall, which will be brought down to standards that the DOT is looking for. So the new entrance, just further west there on 155, will meet all the requirements for DOT. It'll come into two separated parking areas. Those will serve the new town offices, as well as there will be additional spaces to make up for the spaces that we're going to lose over at the annex. And then there's a pedestrian walk that will go between the two, I call them campuses, but between the two areas of the development to gain access that way. So there won't be any loss of parking areas that currently exist. The site plan itself is fairly simple. There's not a lot of earth movement that has to be done. It will contain a new subsurface septic field for this new structure that's going to be going in there. There was consideration taken to the impervious coverage on the site. We're trying to limit that as much as possible to keep it as close to regulation as we can. We are proposing roofline drip edge on the building to negate a lot of the impervious that comes from building the structure on the site. That will cause the water to infiltrate into the ground and reduce our imprint and get that groundwater recharge to make sure the aquifer stays healthy there. As far as the remainder of the site, it's fairly simple, and if there are any questions as things go, I'll open up to you guys and let Ben direct that from here. Thank you.
That's your presentation? Okay. I think it's appropriate to entertain some questions for the contractors relative to the project. And if we could insulate that from our discussion of the amendment of Article 2, but just any clarification you need about the building project itself. So please, questions for the contractors. Please come forward. State your name and address.
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road. Just had a question about the ceiling construction. The attic insulation is loose fill, and the ceilings are tile, 2x4 foot tile. So is it loose fill sitting on top of the tile, or?
So as we further through design, right now our vision is, we do have a scope of work on the back table also, which should be posted to the website. Great question. So typically we have a cold attic, so we have loose fill at this point in the attic with polyplastic below to hold that cellulose in place. Below that, we're going to have sheetrock and or a void space to run any ductwork and electrical below the actual attic construction, the trusses. And then we will have a suspended ceiling system, so things are easily accessed above there for maintenance, things like that. We're looking at electric VRF systems that will go with solar energy either during this project or down the road. And those are all easily accessed through catwalks in the attic.
Thank you. Other questions about the project?
Deborah Shanda, 18 Hill Farm Road.
Did you get the name? Thank you.
Yes. Just one question, just you talked about septic and I assume water, and I was wondering if there was any consideration for the other buildings that are located in the town center. Are you extending it beyond it, or is it just limited to this building?
Another great question. At this point, we are designing for the new town offices only. We have explored other options for septic systems to accommodate the existing buildings as well as a well. Cost comparison, full disclosure right now, as of Monday, we're presenting this building as it is, Carino Construction, designed to use. Currently running estimates. So this project's been awarded based off of budget. The great thing about design build, and I will answer your question, you just kind of dancing around it, is we're designing to the town's budget. So as a contractor, we can design, we know how much things cost as we go. So it's just a very fluid process. We have absolutely looked at the other buildings, and at this time, having one large septic system to accommodate everything we feel is more expensive at this point. It's going to be a long design process to accommodate the other buildings. Costs so far have shown separate septic system just for this building, separate well just for this building. With the design process, our job is to put a design rendering concepts together, put a price together with that. Obviously, we hope this is approved March 12th. After that, we still have a long design process. We're expecting 4 to 6 months, including planning board approval. So we are still going to be getting into design development and really tweaking this design as we move forward, as well as the infrastructure for the buildings as we move forward with design.
Could I just piggyback on that, Mr. Moderator? One of the things the select board is very aware of is the current septic system for the library and other buildings in the center of town. And the board has talked in great length and great detail about what to do about the center of town. And the board members can certainly speak for themselves with regard to this, but in the meetings that I have been at, we've talked about multi-phases for the regeneration of the town center. And the building of the town office with its water and sewer would be one phase, and quite likely the next phase, whether you call it phase 3 or phase 4, would see an attempt to do something about the septic and sewer for the other town buildings. And correct me if I'm wrong, Katrina.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And I think the thing to realize is we have been dancing around this. I think a lot of you remember having charrettes, having all these plans. What becomes incredibly challenging is doing each job well. So we decided that the building that we need and that makes sense, especially if you look at the dollars, is to have this building built. Then in the next phases, we can work on what does that mean for the old town hall, and that could possibly become something like a community center or some other type of office. And we can focus then on what's needed to happen in that area, make sure all the septics work together, make sure we upgrade all those things. That's down the road. We want to focus right now just on this one building that we need so that we can make sense going forward.
Other questions about the project, please?
John Tappan again. Maybe I didn't hear correctly, but I thought I heard that the other buildings would be on a separate well.
All to be worked out, but that right now the focus is on this building.
So this well is not going to be sized to handle the other buildings.
That will all be discussed and figured out. Do we have any more information before looking at
I understand the separate septic system, which makes sense, but trying to find a place for 2 separate wells, because the well that's there has to move in order to expand the parking lot.
Then that would be combined as I go forward.
So you think you're going to find a place for 2 separate wells?
No. What we're discussing is the options going forward. So if it makes more sense and it's more economic to put those together, then we'll do that. We just don't, I don't think we're the final decisions on this.
The well should be sized for all the buildings so that there's one well.
Thank you. Other questions about the project, please?
David Cedarholm, 81 Fox Garrison Road. Just curious, what are your thoughts about if there's an addition that needs to be added on? Where would that be? What have you provided or thought about in that way?
Great question.
Yeah, that's also a common theme that we've heard and carried throughout the design process. So on the floor plan, it shows doors with corridors on the east and west ends of the building. So those would be the obvious places where we could provide an addition in the future if they need to expand the building.
It was important to have it easy to add on, but also to only make what we need right now, so we weren't wasting money for possible growth, but that it was easy to add in. So.
I think we all recognize that the project still has a bit of flux in its design, and it's not a rigid decision at this point, but please, next question.
Chuck Cox, 36 Captain Smith Emerson Road. I've been involved in a number of projects here, many of which have not materialized. They've all involved a lot of public input, committees that have worked on this, and I'm hoping that we have projects that the town is involved with, citizens and whatnot. And I hope that the input in this design can be carried forward. I'm sort of look at the what is now the Historic Society Annex, which started out as the fire station, which was built by and for the people in Lee. I don't know if there was a main contractor or designer, but it was done by the town and people. And it's been used for many things. I think people are quite committed and, feel something on that. And I'm hoping that our other projects can certainly involve the rest of the town, including it's not just a strip mall type of thing, which no one has much interest in. And that if in the design and the materials and whatnot, as much of that as local as we can get, I think we've got some people in town with knowledge and experience and ideas that should be thought and looked at. I'm not sure what the process is going to be on that. But we haven't really talked about landscaping and whatnot, how this comes in. I think this is certainly one thing that we do have some people in town that are involved with this type of thing, and hopefully that those will be, come through with that. And so I don't know, the design build, I think certainly I see real advantages in that the design build, they're certainly more attuned to cost than getting an architect that has this great ideas, and often it becomes quite excessive. But I think that we need to have as much input from people in town and how this is going to come up. If we're going to be living with this, as many of our other buildings, for at least 50 years, 100 years, or maybe more. So I'm hoping that we can be involved with that.
Thank you. I just want to zero in on our questions about the presentation specifically. If we could have another question there. Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. Again, I'm Stephanie with Carino Construction. I just wanted to shed light and put value on the comments that you were making about making the town involved, and a lot of town input has gone into this design as it stands right now. We've had multiple public hearings, and one of the big drivers of this design was that meeting space, the large conference room on the floor plan that you may have noticed. We wanted to make sure that it was able to fulfill many needs throughout the town, so different committees, different groups of people can use this space as a community and be used by many people throughout the town. And as one perk of the design build process is that we, as the design develops, we can find ways to incorporate the town. And upgrades can be made to materials as we sift through these numbers, and the cost and the design are a very integrated process. So we definitely kept all of these things in mind, and you can see as well that on our scope of work outline, one of the value engineering ideas is to let the community do some of the landscaping, have the community help with some aspects of the project. So by taking certain aspects off of Carino's hands and getting the community involved, it's a way for you to be cost efficient and to include maybe some more energy efficient aspects into your design and into your building. So thank you for that comment.
Okay, other questions specifically about the presentation? We're going to have plenty of time to talk about where this stands with the, when we discuss the amendment and the article itself.
Bambi Miller, 45 Bell Lane. I have two questions for you. Is the large conference room you believe to be large enough to have the selectmen meetings in and the public attend?
The purpose of that meeting room, the
Okay.
plan is to currently continue in the public safety complex for now. And then the vision is eventually that the Old Town Hall is that space.
Okay.
So
I wanted that clarified because it didn't seem large enough for
Not
that.
at all.
The
That meeting
second-
room was actually set up pretty much like the one in the existing town office, just to provide us a place for Conservation Commission, Trails Committee, committees like that to have a meeting space.
I just wanted that clear for people, so, because I know there was people that wanted that all in the same
We
location.
didn't want to waste any extra money on space that wasn't used regularly and consistently, and we wanted to make sure that the Old Town Hall had a really important purpose still, and that had a lot of ways that it was going to be used.
Okay, the other question is, this looks to me, and I may be wrong, so if you could speak to the sustainability and also energy efficiency that in the design here, if we could have them speak to that, and what above just basic standard level you were looking at right now.
Thank you for the question. Sustainability being, energy efficiency being another theme that was mentioned early on and carried throughout the process. So I mentioned earlier that the building was oriented on the east-west axis to take advantage of passive solar and, again, potentially active solar PV array in the future. We've talked collectively about the construction materials for the exterior building envelope, meaning the walls and the roof construction. We've discussed ICF, which is insulated concrete form, which is essentially concrete walls with insulation continuously on both the interior and the exterior. The roof being a cold, vented, conventional roof, most cost-effective and high-performing for this climate zone. Blown-in insulation exceeding the code minimum for the current 2018 building code. We've seen some, speaking of the building code, the adoption of the 2018 and even the 2015 International Building Code has brought performance requirements up to a higher standard than we've seen in the past. This applies not only to the building envelope for insulation, but also for mechanical systems, electrical systems, things like that. We've all noticed that we've made a shift from fluorescent lighting or incandescent lighting into LED. So the building would be designed to have all LED lighting. Indoor air quality is always something that we put an emphasis on in the design process, so we try to select materials that will, just like we would in a school or another building where occupants occupy the spaces regularly for long periods of time and could be exposed to the different types of materials. We try to limit materials that can off-gas or have other components from the manufacturing that could potentially cause degradation to indoor air quality. We haven't nailed down exactly what the mechanical systems would be, but again, that's speaking to the point about how we're early in the design process, and our design build team, along with input from the town and the select board, will help narrow down what our best options are for mechanical heating ventilation systems for the building. If you have other specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Can I add too that we will be in communication with New Hampshire Saves and Eversource? They're already aware of the building possibility and have asked to be involved as much as possible. There's money and funding for increased and improved insulation. So this is the starting point, and then we'll do the most we can to make it as energy efficient as possible.
Other questions about the presentation? This gentleman, and then you're next, okay? You're up, Paul.
He's considerably taller than I am. But he yields. You know, if I may, just a housekeeping matter, I think the amp is really low, and I would encourage everybody to speak right into the mic,
Okay.
for the sake of the recording. And I know we're a half hour into this already, so we may have lost stuff. I have been following this, but I just wonder, for the sake of the voters, if you could speak, the board and the construction firm, could speak to the site work and the entrance, and how the money might play out in that. What part of it is bond, what part of it is coming from other funding sources, what is Carino's assumed responsibility at this point in time for getting that to happen, where does the DOT fit in? Just for the sake of where we are now, if you could speak to what the plan is. Thank you.
Sounds like you, Andy.
Okay, well, I can certainly start. One of the things I would point to is there is a scope of work from Carino on the table in the back. If all the copies are gone, I can certainly make that available online on the town website and on Facebook. That said, the discussion to date, there is some concern about having the entrance directly across 155 from Wednesday Hill Road. We have sent the site plans to DOT and requested the specific opinion as to whether changes would be required as to the location of Wednesday Hill Road. We have not heard back specifically yet from DOT. We expect to fairly shortly. I have spoken through the Planning and Zoning Department with Logger, who is very interested in doing the clearing work for us. We have not discussed site preparation beyond removal of the trees there, and that would either be at very low or close to no cost based on discussions with the forestry company. And that's the input I have. I don't know if Ben or Katrin have more to add.
So the civil scope of work is indicated on our preliminary scope of work, but to answer that question, our site package will include building, clearing of land, whether it's town loggers or ours, we'll iron that out. The infrastructure for the new building, including septic, well, drainage, the building pad, paving the parking lots, site lighting, things like that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Eric Gibson, Scotland Road. And thank you for referring to me as a gentleman, even though we've known each other for a while. My question is, I'm looking at the draft of the concept plan. And all buildings in the surrounding area of the proposed building and the proposed building are noted as solid structures. The other one that I noticed in a dotted outline is what I presume is the former parish building or parsonage, if that's correct or not. And does this indicate to the public that that building will no longer be there if indeed this happens, this concept happens? And why, if that's going to be destroyed? My understanding is, I believe that's a historic building, so to the town. Just a question of concern.
I think we had, just last year at this session, and it was decided at the second session at the polling place that they have 5 years to decide what's going to happen to the parsonage, and so we're probably got 4 years left on that calendar, and so I would imagine that nothing could be done with that until that particular article was put to bed by the voters.
And again, does it impact, and is that indicating that that building is not
Well,
collectible?
I'll let somebody else answer that one.
One of the things that we did was we planned this without that building taken into consideration, either standing or not standing. It's there. It has, in order to be usable by the town, there are things that will have to happen, but this building we're working on right now that we're discussing is not impacting the parsonage, the parish house as we call
In
it.
theory, the parsonage would still be there.
It's not going to be touched during this process.
Thank you.
I can answer your question. So Carino didn't charge.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
could you go ahead and introduce yourself, and are you allowing her to have the microphone for a minute?
I'm going to
For
answer.
clarification?
She has the answer that I'm asking.
Okay, so go ahead, Karen.
So Carino took our plan that we had done years ago to purchase we did a lot line adjustment with the church to purchase the property that the parish house is on. So they use that plan as an overlay. So the reason it's dotted and looks different than ours is because when we did the lot line adjustment, that building was to be raised, taken down. So they just used, because they didn't charge the town for all this work, they just used plans that we had. So that originates from our plan. That's why it's dotted and looks different than all the rest of them.
I see, thank you so much. May I follow up with another
Certainly.
question? And you'll have to forgive me because I'm mostly deaf.
Okay.
So I may have not heard the question or answer to this question.
Could you come a little closer to the microphone?
Did the board of select persons, select people, however you want to call yourself,
Select board?
did you actually go out and look at other town halls, other sites throughout this process and say, yeah, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, and that sort of thing? And if you did, where were those locations, just out of curiosity?
We looked at many other locations as they have been throughout the past couple decades. There was the Stevens Field by the Public Safety Complex, looked at other areas by the Little River Park, all those. Oh, looked at other people's?
Other towns, I'm sorry.
Other towns. Yes, and we did. We looked into other town halls. Barrington just built actually by Carino, and looked at other town halls around. And one of the things that was important to this town that we really wanted to represent was having an area that was where many things could be together, that was a kind of a center of town, so the library and the historical buildings and all that. And that the reason that we have the parish house was originally we had planned to use that land to build that center. So that's the history.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good question.
Other questions about the presentation? We're going to have plenty of chance to talk about the overall project and how it sits in the town when we discuss the article itself. So this is about the presentation. Yep.
Chris Regan, 19 Earl Drive. Just wondered, I don't know a lot about what the issue is with Lindsay Road, but have you incorporated any money into the budget if something does have to be changed, it's going to cost money? Thank you.
At this point, we have no specifics with regard to what we might have to do or not have to do to Wednesday Hill Road. Obviously, if we have to modify it, there's going to be some expense. There would probably be some discussion as to whether that would be funding that could come from Bridges and Roads Capital Reserve Fund, as opposed to having it come from the funds for construction of a building. We hope to have more specifics when we get an opinion from DOT engineers about what they will allow and what they won't. Sort of vague, but that's where we are right now.
Okay, I'll take one more question about the presentation before we start to talk about the article, please.
John Tappan, two things. First, to correct what was said about the parsonage. In the subdivision plan that was approved, the parsonage is marked as structures to be removed and or relocated. So it was not just raised, it was either removed or relocated. The other thing is, I would like to commend Carino, speaking as the person who has perhaps had the most complaints about the previous design, is that they have been very responsive, and what they've presented as a design today is, I think, miles ahead of what we saw just a very short time ago. And I would hope that this process would continue, that there would be additional presentations and meetings with the public to take that public input that they've indicated that they're willing to do. And I just need to say thank you for being responsive.
Okay, I promised one more question, but who's to deny Linda Reinhold chance?
Linda Reinhold, 242 North River Road. I was just wondering if this is approved, what the timeline is. Are we talking, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? And I understand building and everything is always blips, but what would the timeline be?
Great question. So we're setting aside approximately 6 months for design work, which is taking concepts, additional town feedback. So let's say March 12th, we're looking at 3 months of design work to be planning board ready. So we present the planning board, get feedback, and then continue design from there. So we're assuming 6 months of design time, including the planning board process and hopefully the permitting process. Construction-wise, that would bring us to September-ish, October-ish for a start. Typically buildings at this size and this type of construction, 8 to 9 months start to finish for building. The goal is to have foundations, which is ICF, which is just I'm going to say glorified foundation work, but we pour concrete footings and start building our large walls after that. The idea is to get that in before the weather starts turning to save on winter conditions, and then we start framing the truss systems and doing some of the envelope throughout the winter as we set up to start the interiors after that. And that's about so 3 months to get the actual envelope set up and ready for interior construction. And we're thinking about 5 to 6 months for interior construction.
All right, we're going to conclude the presentation from Sereno at this time and thank them for their carefully done presentation. We're going to move on to the body considering the amendment to Article 2. And it's been a while since we read out Article 2 and the amendment to Article 2, and I'm wondering if we could ask either somebody from the Select Board or the Town Clerk to read us the proposed amendment for Article 2, and then we'll open the floor for discussion to the amendment.
I'm going to vote no on reading that again. Great, Mr. Robertson will read this for us.
Okay. The motion to amend was to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $1,800,000 for the purpose of designing, engineering, building, and equipping a new municipal office building, which includes site work, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $1,400,000 of bonds or notes for this project in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1 ASEC, as amended, and to authorize the Select Board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, to authorize the Select Board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes and determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity, other terms thereof, and to authorize the Select Board to take any other actions or pass any other vote relative thereto, including but not limited to withdrawing $400,000 from the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund and to further raise and appropriate an additional sum of $35,000 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. The Select Board recommends this article. It requires a 3/5 ballot vote majority to pass, and the estimated tax impact is 3 cents per thousand.
Thank you, Andy. Can you just highlight the two things that changed?
The two things that changed are the amount of the overall project moving from $1.7 million to $1.8 million, and the amount of money withdrawn from the Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund. That increased by $100,000.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the floor for discussion of the amendment to Article 2.
Jennifer Messiter, 147 Wadley Falls Road. I only had a wording
Could
question.
you be a little closer to the microphone, please? Thank you. That's,
I'm looking down, that's the problem. A wording question.
So in the middle, where it talks about the select board to issue, negotiate, sell, deliver, etc., determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity, other terms thereof. It feels like there's a word missing, or maybe I just don't know the financial term of maturity, other terms.
Would anybody like to address that terminology? Andy's leaving the room. All right. Is anybody comfortable with the terminology to recognize whether there should be a change there?
It almost feels like it's missing an and, the maturity and other terms. I noticed when Corinne was reading it earlier, she glitched there twice, the same way mine glitched.
So a comma or an and or something? Or?
Something is.
And I think something's missing, but I don't know for sure.
Can we borrow you for a second?
I'm sorry?
Sit.
Asking Wendy to come address this question.
Andy, did you hear the question?
I did not.
Okay. So could you quickly repeat your point there? So.
Yeah, so in the middle where we're determining the rate of interest thereon and the maturity, other terms thereof. It feels like there's an and missing, but I don't know.
I don't believe there is, and this warrant article language has actually been approved by our bond attorney and has also been submitted to the Department of Revenue for review, and they both felt that it was correctly worded, so.
Sounds like we're okay.
I guess I don't know and understand then what maturity, other terms are, and I don't know if you can explain what that phrase means.
I would have difficulty explaining exactly what that term means off the top of my head.
I think that has to do with the maturity of the bond and what you're doing with the terms of the interest and maturity on those as you're making the payments.
Right, and there would be a secondary warrant article in an ensuing year that would authorize the board to spend the interest from the bond as the years went by.
Okay. So it's a way to make sure the words cover, because what happens is you have a large chunk of money that the bond gives you. You don't pay it all out right away. It makes an interest, and you have to then have a second thing that says we can spend that interest that we made on that. So it's just the technicalities of interest and maturity.
But as long as we're...
Legal law words.
Yeah, as long as we're comfortable that they're correct, I will.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Other comments or questions about the amendment to Article 2, please?
John Tappan. The previous question raised was clearly correct. There is a word missing. And just because DRA or some lawyer read it, it doesn't mean that they didn't overlook it. The person who was just standing here just happened to have been the first person to notice. But there is the word, either the word and or the word or the word and missing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we could plow that ground when we move back to the adoption of Article 2. And we're still working on discussion of the amendment to Article 2, which deals principally with 2 number changes in that article. Further discussion of the amendment? Hearing none, we'll ask the voters to vote on the amendment with your voter card. All those in favor of the amendment signify by raising your voter card. All those opposed to the amendment, raise your voter card. The amendment passes. So we now have an amendment to Article 2. So we'll open the floor for discussion to Article 2.
There's nothing that would legally change. I would put forward an amendment to change the wording, to add an and between, where it is, maturity and...
Could you go a little bit closer, please?
Yeah. I'm adding a motion to add the word and between maturity and other terms thereof. I don't think that the and will change the meaning, but I do agree that it is a strange terminology. The hard part is we don't have the lawyer to answer this question first.
All right, we have a motion to further amend Article 2. Is there support for that motion? Second to the motion. All right, we have a second to the motion. Discussion of the motion to amend. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the amendment signify by raising your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed? The amendment passes. The word "and" will be added to that particular subject area. Now we're back to Article 2. Any further discussion of Article 2? Please.
I was just wondering of the select board if there was any contemplation of putting an offer in to buy the building that are currently in for the town offices. And second, if with the commercial real estate diminishing in value all over the country, if you've even thought about renegotiating the lease.
Yes, we did look into that carefully. That was the first thing we wanted to do, and that was not an option. And then we looked at other possible buildings in this, of course, because it has to be in Lee, and there were none available. So that's why we went forward with this process. But I agree, that would have been a much easier, faster way to deal with this.
Further discussion on Article 2. All right, we're going to vote on Article 2 as amended. All those in favor of Article 2, please signify by raising your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Article 2 is passed as amended. I would ask the town clerk to move it to the official ballot.
A motion to restrict and
restrict reconsideration.
Thank you, of this article. I'm trying to write this at the same time.
All right, we have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 2. Any second to that motion?
Second.
Second? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 2, raise your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. If you've been here before, you know this is a tedious thing that we do as we restrict reconsideration of these articles. Now we'll move forward to Article 3. We're flying. So, Rebecca, would you please read Article 3? Really get close to the microphone. You can come here if you like.
All right, warrant Article 3, the operating budget. Shall the town of Lee raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $5,588,662. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $5,108,202, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the select board or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The select board recommends this article, majority vote required. The estimated tax impact of $6.05, up 46 cents from the prior year.
All right, thank you for the presentation on Article 3. We have a presentation, I believe, about some of the particulars of the article.
Yeah, we can certainly run through the next few slides that highlight the differences in the budget. There's a comparison of the 24 and 25 budgets. You can see the areas that there were a few that went down. The primary thing that went away was the long-term debt payment of $30,000. That's why the default budget is actually a little lower than last year's budget as well. There's no interest or payment for long-term debt. Fiscal year 25 operating budget highlights. I don't know that this is necessarily a highlight, but the budget as proposed is up 8.96%. That's $460,256. The largest increases were in personnel administration and in fire. A big chunk of these increases had to do with personnel costs, wage adjustments, salary increases, particularly with regard to fire and police, where we've had a hard time attracting candidates and retaining candidates in those departments. Salary and wage increases obviously cause a major jump in personnel administration. That's where we pay for things like health insurance, retirement, Medicare, Social Security payments, the ancillary wage costs. Department lines include a 2% COLA for all employees across the board. There is a 7% wage increase on top of that for fire department personnel. The budget includes adding funds for the nation's 250th anniversary birthday that's coming up. There is some planning underway to make sure that Lee participates and celebrates in an appropriate way. Insurance costs increased significantly. I've been advised by Primex and Health Source, our insurance carriers, that I can expect significant increases in July. The most significant being the health insurance. They're estimating a 14.7% increase. Typically, they come back sometime in May or June as we approach the July 1st renewal and knock that down a little bit. I will say this present year we're in, they did not knock that rate down anywhere near as much as they have in the past. So we've budgeted accordingly. The Heritage and Ag Commission budgets were not funded at their request. When you look under Heritage, you'll see the money for the 250th, the nation's 250th anniversary celebration under Heritage. There wasn't a better line to place it under, so it went there, but that committee is independent of the Heritage Commission. Fiscal year 23 revenues, when we closed at the end of June this year, we're a little over $18 million. That number is a little misleading because it includes capital reserve fund transfers, which are treated as revenue on the books when they come out. Got some charts following the operating budget, just giving you a little bit of history with regard to where we've been and where we're going. The revenue chart, which is actually positive, we've received more state aid and federal aid in the last few years than we expected or received in years prior. You can see there, moving on to the tax rate breakdown. This year's tax rate, the operating budget and town budget with warrant articles equated to $5.59. At this point, the school is anticipating an 82-cent increase for the coming year, above that local education rate. I have not seen anything from the state regarding the state education rate, and the county is in the process of working out their budget right now, so I don't have an amount that I could calculate a projection for the county tax rate. I've included fund balances for expendable trusts and capital reserve trusts. These are numbers from the chairman of the trustee of the trust funds, Mr. Tappan, and they were effective. My sheet says January 31st, 24. It should be December, and I believe the slide says December 31st. And those are the operating budget highlight slides that I had.
Okay, that's your presentation for Article 3. Is there discussion of Article 3? Questions or discussion? Discussion of Article 3. Hearing no discussion, we'll ask you to vote on Article 3. All those in favor of Article 3 as presented, please raise your voter card. All those opposed to Article 3, please raise your voter cards. The article passes. We'll ask the Article 3 to be transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk, and we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3.
I move to restrict reconsideration of this article.
Is there support?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 3, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed? Reconsideration is restricted for Article 3. Article 4, I think we have Ms. Gazowski. No? We have, okay, please. I'm sorry.
Deborah Shanda, 18 Hill Farm Road. I'm here as a trustee of the library, and I'm also the treasurer of the library, of the trustees. Warrant Article 4 is Lee Library renovations, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $200,000 to be used for Lee Library renovations. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact, 23 cents.
Is there support for Article 4? Second? We have a second for Article 4. Discussion, Article 4. You have the right to speak first if you'd like.
So I would just like to talk to the brochure that everyone has picked up, which really talks about what we've already accomplished. So we started in approximately August of 23 with our renovation. We had been depositing money for the past few years, and we finally had enough that we could actually kick off the project. And we've done significant work. Unfortunately, the schoolhouse was in very ill repair, and we had to do a lot of mitigation of hazardous materials, etc., full insulation, took it down to the bare bones, and rebuilt it. So that took up a lot of the money thus far, but it looks beautiful, and there is an open house coming the last weekend of February. We are, with the current money from the last year as well, we're moving forward, and we are putting in the lift. So we will have a lift going into the basement so that we can make that space usable as well. And we have a small amount, and so we are going to continue on with the other two sections of the library on the first floor. What we are seeking here is the $200,000 so that we can continue into the basement. We have all the contractors, the architect, everybody is ramping to go and to continue. And so we think this is an opportune time to just get it done and make that, actually use that lift to transport people up and down as needed. We don't anticipate a lot, but it is required by law, so we did it. Yeah. Oh, and I did want to mention also, somebody brought my attention that our current building fund, the library, or building fund, I'll get it wrong, is about $600,000. No fear, that is being spent. So that is being diminished. We have signed a contract that will diminish that 100%. So that's where we're at right now, and that's why we need the $200,000.
Any questions about that presentation from the library or discussion of Article 4? Please.
John Tappan.
Could you be really close?
John Tappan. During the ABC meeting the year, it was stated that the town budget trajectory is not sustainable. And the select board has started to take some action to consider the possibility of sharing the provision of some services with other towns. But it's not just the town budget that's not on a sustainable trajectory. Appropriations to trust funds, reserve funds, and capital project appropriations are not on a sustainable trajectory either. It's probably not big enough, but from 2021 to 2022, those appropriations increased more than 22%. The next year, they increased more than 19%. The year after that, from fiscal year 2023 to 2024, they increased 41%. And now, another increase of greater than 19%. Now, that might be sort of understandable if we were actually, with those appropriations, planning to pay for what we have in our schedule, but we're not. Coming up is an appropriation to the fire equipment, but the amount that being appropriated, $175,000, is not enough to pay for the fire apparatus that's planned to be replaced. in town buildings. There's $200,000 this year going to town buildings, but there's no plan for town hall rehabilitation, for the salt shed replacement, for the highway garage addition, or putting in a fire suppression system in the public safety complex where it is required by National Fire Protection Association code. So I have no, it is, for me, it is not a question of what does the library deserve or should the libraries be supported. The question is, what can we afford and what are our priorities? And when we're not appropriating enough money for fire apparatus and we're not planning for other things like rehabilitation of the town hall that you expect to need in the future, then I think we cannot afford this extra money for the library. As was just pointed out, the Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund will be fully expended this year. The other fund, the Library Capital Reserve Fund, will be down to about $8,000. They will have spent in the three previous years plus this year about $800,000. And in their plan, after this $200,000 for what they submitted to the CIP committee, is still expecting to spend another $960,000 on the library. We need to set priorities because we can't afford everything that we think we'd like to have.
John, is there an amendment to the motion in there somewhere?
No, I'm not asking to amend it. I'm simply stating that I think that it's something that we cannot afford.
Thank you. Further discussion of Article 4. Comments, discussion on Article 4, please.
Paul Guzowski, Lamprey Lane. Can the town administrator or the board speak to the amount of funding we receive from the state of New Hampshire?
I can attempt to speak to that. I have some revenue information. Do you mean beyond rooms and meals or highway block grants or?
In general, maybe a percentage of what percentage of our revenue income comes from the state to our operating budget or anything for that matter?
Sure. Not a great deal. We get about $400,000 in rooms and meals. And I believe this year we got a little over $100,000 with regard to highway block grants. We had an $83,000 bridge grant that we received. It's typically well under $500,000, well under $1 million, I mean.
Okay, and that's on an annual basis.
It is. The highway block aid and the rooms and meals tax are paid annually to us. The last 2 years, the state has thrown in a little bit of extra bridge money and road money. And I may have that delineated in the revenue slide.
That's okay.
You need to see that, Paul?
I don't. I think my point, we all know my point. My point is we pay the highest property taxes in the United States. We rely on property taxes. We would never get anything done, capital or otherwise, if we didn't appropriate it ourselves. So maybe the underlying issue is with who we elect the state and how we perceive that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
And some of that revenue money, just to follow up, is specifically earmarked. We can use rooms and meals tax as revenue, but a lot of the highway funds come with very specific instruction about what you can use it for.
Can I add a little to that too? When I came into the board, we did not have any plans for maintenance or anything on our buildings. So our buildings were falling into disrepair. There was no plan for them. There was no one working on maintaining them. It was embarrassing. And we have worked very hard to create and work with Mr. Tappan on the financial planning tool. The reason that we know more about what expenses are coming up is because we've done the work to think about what maintenance actually means. One of the reasons that it's so important that we think about this new town building is because, yes, for 20 years it'll be similar to renting, but then that's it. We don't have to keep paying for that building. We're trying to think about the long-term future, and I don't know if you've ever gotten an old car that's kind of beat up. So you're going to have to go and get it fixed up. It's going to have to get able to run, and then you'll be able to maintain it at a more reasonable rate. But right now, we're making up for decades of lack of care, and so that's why those numbers are high right now. When you take care of things, they don't cost as much because they don't fall apart as much. That's the plan.
Thank you. Other discussion on Article 4?
Jennifer Messiter, 147 Wadley Falls Road. Clarify capital reserve fund. My understanding of what those are, it's budgeting against the future. Like, we know we have to fix our roof on our house 10 years from now. I'm not going to wait 10 years and then suddenly have a $2,000, $20,000, $30,000 bill. I'm going to set aside some every time I get paid. And that's my understanding of this. Is that correct or incorrect?
For a lot of these, that is correct. So, like, we know that in so many years we're going to replace the fire engine again. We just replaced it. It's beautiful. We love it. But it's going to have to get replaced because they have a finite lifespan. So yes, a lot of these funds are specifically going to save that. And if you look on our site, we do have a copy of the financial planning tool, which outlines a lot of those things we're expecting to have come up and whether or not that fund is saving for them or whether they're things that we actually not sure how we're going to pay for in the future. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of things on that list that we're not sure how we're going to end up paying for or if we're going to even be able to get them, if we ever are going to be able to replace certain things. But most of these capital reserve funds are set up so that we can replace the fire engine in 10 years or whatever piece of equipment they know is coming due. That way we're not hit with a $1 million fire engine in 1 year.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Yeah.
Two things. Just if you pull the financial planning tool up off the town website, Mr. Tappan has designed that so you can see exactly where anticipated funding is coming from. And if it's anticipated to come from a capital reserve fund or an expendable trust fund, you can clearly see that on the financial planning tool. And also to circle back to Mr. Gosowski's question, the exact amount of money that we received last year in terms of our two large grants from the state, we received $400,020 for rooms and meals tax, and we received $164,189 in state highway block grant aids.
It's like 1/39th of the revenue. 1/39th, approximately.
Further discussion on Article 4? Hearing no further discussion on Article 4, we'll ask Article 4 to be transferred to the official ballot by our town clerk. And we will then ask for a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 4. All those in favor of restricting? You know, here's the deal. I blew it on the last article. We're not supposed to vote on these articles to transfer them to the official ballot.
Perfect.
And here's why. Because if you voted no, nothing could happen because they have to go to the official ballot.
There we go.
So I made a mistake on the last one. I hope you didn't catch me, but you did. So now we're trying to fix it on this one by, if there's no further discussion on Article 4, we'll ask the town clerk to transfer Article 4 as written to the official ballot.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for catching it. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 4?
I move to restrict reconsideration of this article.
Second.
Motion's been forwarded and second to restrict reconsideration. All those in favor of that, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. we have restricted reconsideration of Article 4, Article 5. And I have Scott Nemitz' name next to that one.
Already been hinted at earlier. It's been hinted at already.
There's a little space where you can...
Tiny space.
Good morning. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000 to be deposited into the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required. Estimated tax rate impact of 20 cents.
All right, that's Article 5. Any questions or discussion of Article 5? No discussion of Article 5. Hearing no further discussion on Article 5, we'll ask Article 5 to be transferred as written to the official ballot by the town clerk. And we'll ask for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5.
Move to restrict reconsideration of this article.
Second.
And there's a second. Okay, we have a motion to restrict reconsideration, so all those in favor, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed? We have restricted reconsideration of Article 5. Article 6, I have Katrin's name down next to that one.
Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $200,000 to be deposited into the town buildings capital reserve fund, this sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, and no amount to be raised in general taxation. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required.
You have an opportunity to speak to it if you like.
Sure.
Okay.
This is just another piece of that puzzle of making sure we have enough funding for the buildings going forward.
Okay, that's our presentation for Article 6. Any discussion or questions about Article 6? Thought I saw a voter card up over here, but no. Okay, hearing no further discussion of Article 6, we'll ask that Article 6 be transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk. And we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 6.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 6, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed? We have restricted reconsideration of Article 6. Article 7, we have...
Me.
Got it? Okay. Mr. Bullock.
Article 7, to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited in the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required, tax rate impact of 5 cents.
You have a chance to talk to it if you like.
So we, this year, just applied for a grant through the Volkswagen Clean Fleets program, and they approved us to buy 2 dump trucks paid at 80% the cost, so we'll be able to get 2 brand new dump trucks for about $45,000, and that's with plows, wings, and all the hydraulics put on them. So that money will come out of this trust fund to pay for those 2 trucks. The actual grant total will be about $480,000 that we received.
Thank you, Steve. I can see a shadow on the floor here. That means 6 more weeks of winter on our highways. I just want, by way of thanking Steve for the hard work he does on the roads in the town and our facilities and our solid waste facility and everything else. Any discussion on Article 7? Questions, discussion, Article 7. Seeing no further discussion on Article 7, we'll ask Article 7 to be transferred as is to the official ballot. And we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 7.
Move to restrict reconsideration of this article.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to restrict reconsideration. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. All those opposed? Okay, reconsideration of Article 7 is restricted. Good to kind of keep you perked up, getting that card up in the air, isn't it? Okay, Article 8. We have Steve again. Thank you.
Article 8, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $90,000 to be deposited in the Highway Department Road and Bridge Improvement Plan Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimated tax rate impact of 9 cents. So this article we fix bridges and do road work with. This past year we spent $200,000 out of it, and we did a lot of paving on Wednesday Hill Road. We also did that pipe on Packers Falls Road that came from this fund. That project we ended up getting $393,500 from the state's ARM fund and extra ARPA money to go toward it, so the town's portion was about $60,000, and that covered the engineering costs. Those funds come out of this article.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 8? Questions or discussions for Steve? All right, hearing no further discussion on Article 8, we ask Article 8 be transferred to the official ballot as is by the town clerk. And we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 8.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to restrict, and we will ask those in favor of restricting reconsideration, raise your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Ask that we will restrict reconsideration of Article 8. Article 9, Steve Bullock again.
To see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $90,000 to be deposited in the Transfer Station Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimated tax rate impact of 9 cents. We use this fund to buy skid steers, dumpsters, fix compactors if they break bad enough. We can't cover it out of the operating budget.
Okay, discussion or questions about Article 9? Discussion on Article 9. Seeing no further discussion, we'll ask that Article 9 be transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk as is. And we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 9.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to restrict and second. All those in favor, please raise your voter card. All those opposed, raise your voter card. Thank you. We have restricted reconsideration of Article 9. Article 10. Looks like we have Chief Nimitz on our list.
Article 10, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of not more than $80,000 for the purchase of radio infrastructure to include TB9400 100-watt VHF repeater, P25, simulcast enabled antenna system, GPS discipline simulcast master oscillator to assist the fire department communications from the fire ground to dispatch, other mutual aid agencies and within the department, and to authorize the withdrawal of this amount from the Fire Capital Reserve Fund. Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimate tax rate of $0.
Would you like to speak to it?
So, as we discussed earlier, the Capital Reserve Fund is to purchase new equipment such as the fire apparatus. This is something that's been in our plans for about 10 years now. Our radio infrastructure isn't that great. The south side of town by the racetrack and by the Epping town line is pretty bad. We have issues talking to dispatch on the portables. What this infrastructure does is puts a repeater on the south side of town. So when we key the microphone on our portable, it goes to that antenna. It boosts the transmission to dispatch so we can talk to them better. Currently, right now, if we're on any accidents or any calls down there, we try and utilize the mobile units that are in the apparatus, but that pulls us away from the incident sometimes.
Do you want to speak to the board?
You have a question for him?
Just gonna
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion on Article 10? Yes, sir.
John Tappan. I move to amend Article 10 to remove the words to include a TB 9400 100 watt VHF repeater -P25 simulcast enabled antenna system and a GPS disciplined simulcast master oscillator. With that amendment, the article would read, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of not more than $80,000 for the purchase of radio infrastructure to assist the fire department in communications from the fire ground to dispatch, other mutual aid agencies, and within the department, and to authorize the withdrawal of said amount from the Fire Capital Reserve Fund, Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required. The reason I'm making this recommendation to amend is that these words are very specific, right down to model number. And I'm the chair of the trustees of trust funds, and in courses that we've had, particularly from DRA, they've said that when you have a warrant article that is very specific down to model numbers, you may have a problem that when you go to buy that equipment, that model number, that specific name may not be available anymore. And then how does the trustees of trust funds reimburse the town when the town didn't purchase exactly what the voters voted for? So that's my reason to recommend taking those specific.
I'm going to ask that you'll submit that in writing to the town clerk. I'm going to ask for support of the amendment. Looks like we have way in the back, Ms. Miller, Randy Miller, is seconding the amendment. We'll open the floor for discussion of the amendment. Amendment to 10. And as soon as we get it, please.
David Cedarholm, 81 Fox Garrison Road. I'm just curious of Chief Nemit's support or comment in regard to this amendment.
I actually completely support this. It makes sense to me that it takes the model number out so we can still move forward with what we need to, but John caught it after the fact, so thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment to Article 10? I'm going to ask the town clerk to reread the amendment to Article 10 for voting. Yeah.
You need to get up and move around in there. Okay. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of not more than $80,000 for the purchase of radio infrastructure to assist the fire department in communications from the fire ground to dispatch, other mutual aid agencies, and within the department, and to authorize the withdrawal of said amount from the Fire Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The Select Board recommends this article, majority vote required.
Thank you. That is the proposed amendment. Any further discussion of the amendment? All those in favor of amending Article 10, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter card. Article 10 is amended. I'll ask that Article 10, further discussion of Article 10. I'll ask that Article 10 is transferred as amended to the official ballot and ask for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 10.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to restrict and second. All those in favor, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter card. Article 10 is, reconsideration is restricted. Article 11. I have a Mr. Grondin, I think, on the name.
Yes.
Article 11.
Article 11, to see if the town will vote to establish a solar energy system capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35(1) for the purchase of solar energy systems, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $35,000 to be placed in the said fund. Further, to name the select board as agents to expend from said fund. Select board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact 4 cents. Just a little background. About this time last year, a solar array was being installed on the transfer station roof. It began operation in May. This was the result of a power purchase agreement with Revision Energy, which was signed by the select board in May the year before. The solar array itself was funded by a group of investors. The town does not own the array. It's owned by the investors who sell power to the town. This is an arrangement that many towns, such as Durham, Brentwood, and other several towns, have taken advantage of. The town has not had to pay anything for the array yet, but still realizes some savings on electricity costs. In the power purchase agreement, there's an option that the town can buy the array from the investors after 5 years at about a 40% discount from the original price. If the town of Lee sets aside $35,000 a year, that will cover the estimated cost of the array in 5 years. Purchasing the array will result in a great amount of savings to the town, because the town will own the array, and we won't be paying for the power. The solar array will just produce the power, and we'll have paid for it. There is a projection of cost savings to the town. From 1990 to 2018, the cost of electricity in New Hampshire grew at a rate of 2.6%. So in order to project future savings to the town, a rate of 2.5% increase over the next 40 years was used for the projection of savings. I use 40 years because that's the expected lifespan of the array. So the projected savings to the town over 40 years would be about $460,000. The reason for that is after you pay for it, maintenance costs are very low, and the energy itself is free. It's the sun. Nobody charges for that. What's different about this warrant article is that the costs actually have a payback. So once we paid for the array, our costs have gone down to zero, and then we get free energy. That's why we get the $460,000 benefit. So that's the reason for the $35,000.
I could add, in terms of the contract, we have a 25-year contract with Revision, and as Lou mentioned, after 5 years, we have the ability to purchase. The purchase price in year 6 would be $145,000, and that drops each year down to the year 25, where it's valued at about $23,000 if we want to buy it at that point, and after that it's just fair market value of the equipment moving forward. But the specific number we'd be looking at in year 6 is $145,000.
Questions or discussion on Article 11?
Katrinka Palakia, Wiswell Road. I just have sort of a general question. Is this then a very short-term capital reserve fund, or is it going to be expanded with donation, there are other buildings in town that might be interested in solar. I mean, is it going to be continuing, or is this seen as like a 5-year capital reserve fund? Just curious.
Well, that's why the wording isn't specific to the transfer station. In 5 years, conditions might be different, and the better option might be to just keep buying the power from the investors. And I don't know, Katrin, do you have?
Yes, so I think it gives us the option of being flexible. Things are changing really, really fast in the energy in the world, and the cost of solar has gone down dramatically. And so I think it would go forward past the 5 years for sure. And I think the option, a PPA was a really appropriate choice when towns weren't able to get the tax incentive. That changed last year. So going forward, it would make much more sense to buy things outright to enjoy the savings from day one. So this is just giving us some flexibility and getting us started to save for these things. This is a revenue builder. This is something that's going to help us actually recoup the money and then more. So that's exciting.
Further questions?
I had the same question.
Good question.
Okay, please.
John Tappan, Chair of the Trustees of Trust Funds. Just wanted to point out that capital reserve funds can be created just by a simple majority vote, and capital reserve funds can be discontinued at any authorized meeting like this by a simple majority vote.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion on Article 11? Please.
That
thing's way low for you. Bring it right up.
I need to identify myself again.
Sure.
Gibson, Carlin Road. I haven't been to meetings like this for quite a while, so forgive me if some of this is implied, but to me, and this is no reflection on the board currently, I'm thinking further down the road. The wording in here states to be placed in said fund, further, to name the select board as agents to expend from said fund. Implication being monies will be spent on solar energy system. That's not what it says. It just says that we're leaving this money, basically the way I interpret this, in the hands of the select board as agents to expend from said fund. So, before you answer, but to me, there's no obligation there that that money only has to be spent on solar funds. So should there be a qualifier in there to indicate for the express purpose of?
Yep, hold on just a second.
Yeah, I think the qualifier is sitting directly behind you, and that would be the trustee.
We're going to ask John Tappan to the microphone. John controls these, well, not control them. He's the chairman of the trust funds, and so he's got a lot of good information.
Sorry to answer, forgive me, but I just can't hear well today.
Okay, well, stand right next to him for now. So,
John Tappan, Chair of the Trustees of Trust Funds. The Trustees of Trust Funds can only release funds from a capital reserve fund or a expendable trust fund for the purpose for which the fund was created. And so if an agent has not been named, then the town has to vote again to expend the funds. If an agent has been named to act on the behalf of the town, the agent can only expend the money for the purpose of the fund. And that's something that may not be understood, but the trustees of trust funds, we work for the donors. We don't work for the select board, we don't work for the departments, we look out for the interests of the donors. And in this case, the donors are the taxpayers, the legislative body, the town, that is voting to create this fund and put their tax money into it, and we won't release any money except for that purpose.
Is that helpful?
It's clearing.
Okay. Try again if you like.
No,
Okay.
I'll wait until Wednesday when I get
Thank
that
you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
John Tappan is a very focused guy on this material. We're very pleased to have him working for us in the town. Any further discussion of Article 11? Hearing no further discussion on Article 11, we'll ask Article 11 be transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk. And then we'll make a motion, look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 11.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to restrict reconsideration of Article 11. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. Article 11 is restricted. Article 12, looks like we have Chief Nemeth again.
Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be deposited into the fire ponds and cistern capital reserve fund. The select board recommends this article, majority vote required, estimated tax rate impact of 3 cents.
Would you like to speak to it?
Sure. We used this fund in the past to work on any of the dry hydrants that we have in town, which are any of the ponds with the red pipe coming out of the ponds. We've done Riverside Farm, James Farm, Tamarack. It's also to be used for future installations of cisterns in town. One of the ones that we're looking at is the center of town if the new town hall goes in, so we can have some water supply in the center of town as well.
Questions or discussions on Article 12? Article 12. Hearing no further discussion on Article 12, we ask to be transferred to the official ballot as is. Ask the town clerk to do that. We'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 12.
So moved.
Second.
You guys like doing that, don't you? Okay. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. All please, those in favor, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. And those opposed, please raise your voter cards. We have restricted reconsideration of Article 12. And now we'll move to Article 13. Peter Hoyt, the presenter.
Okay, Article 12. To see if the town will vote and establish a cemetery fencing capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purchase of replacement cemetery fencing and to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be placed in said fund. Further, to name the selectmen as agents to expend this fund. The selectmen recommend this article. Majority vote required. The estimated tax impact is 3 cents. We've got to do some serious work on the Lee Hill Cemetery. That front fence is getting pretty, shall I say, rickety. The cement posts and stuff are deteriorating pretty bad. We've got some pipes that are, well, gone. And we'd like to replace it with something a little bit more, I won't say rugged, but something that'll stay there, but at the same time let the snow pass through when they push back on snowbanks and stuff. We also have a new cemetery coming online at Clay Lane. We have to fence that once we get it surveyed out and laid out. And this is basically a fund to put money aside so that when these expenses come, we can pay for them.
Thank you, Peter. Any question or discussion on Article 13? Please.
John Tappan again. Peter, I'm sorry, I did not notice this before. It specifically says, for the purchase of replacement cemetery fencing. You just mentioned fencing at Clay Lane. Is there already a fence there that you're going to replace?
No.
So I think
We
that,
need to reword something.
I think there's an additional couple of words needed, like for the purchase of new and replacement.
I would say that's what we need to add.
So do I hear a motion to amend?
Are you gonna second it for him?
Well, we're working on the written motion to give to the town clerk so we can vote on this. Looks like we have a motion to amend. We're looking for a second on that motion to amend. Bambi Miller in the back of the room will be our second on that motion. Go ahead, Mr. Cedarholm. What's your comment?
This will enable us to install new, replace, but how about maintenance?
Well, if it's going to be a major maintenance, we probably have to pull it out of this fund.
So, but it won't say that unless we also insert maintenance.
Wonder if replace doesn't cover that?
You might not be replacing it, you might just be maintaining it, painting it, or, I'm just saying.
We have a motion on the floor with certain wording
There's a
problem.
and
Yes.
seconded.
We had the same thought and we had the same request, and I think Mr. Tappan, you're waiting to tell us, but I think
Okay, we'll have clarification on this motion to amend.
we already looked into it.
So the fund that you're looking to create is a capital reserve fund. And you can create those for capital expenses. So replacing a fence is a capital expense. Building a new fence is a capital expense. Maintaining is not. If you want a fund for maintaining, then that would be a non-capital reserve fund, a different type of fund.
Thank you.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor, and I wonder if the town clerk would read that amendment for clarification. Amendment has been seconded.
Article 13, to see if the town will vote to establish a cemetery fencing capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 3501 for the purchase of a new or replacement cemetery fencing and to raise appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be placed in said fund. Further, to name the select board as agents to expend from said fund. The select board recommends this article, majority vote required.
Okay, that's our amendment, a motion to amend. It's on the floor. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. Article 13 has been amended. Any further discussion on Article 13?
Jen Messiter, Wadley Falls Road. So by naming this a cemetery fencing capital reserve fund, it can't be spent on anything but fencing. Is it correct to say that all other cemetery needs are taken care of elsewhere?
Usually it's out of our budget, yes.
Okay, no problem.
Question.
Thank you. Other discussion of Article 13? Mr. Cox.
Yeah. Cox, 36 Captain Smith Emerson Road. I guess it comes to the question, why do we have fences around cemeteries? Are they required? They are required, okay. I know there's some poem or something about this, who's going to go out and who wants to get in, so I think we need to be thinking about that. And, but if it's required, I guess it's required. I don't know whose thought that was, but I guess that's a state statute, is it?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a fence around our cemetery that we've got on our property.
You better get on that.
One of them we do, the town has, but we've got another one that does not have a fence on it.
Yours is considered a burial ground,
Burial ground.
which is a private area. Nobody publicly can be buried there. Where Lee Hill, Old Parish, and Clay Lane will be a cemetery where the public can be buried. Anybody can.
Well, thank you for that information.
Great bill.
Everybody hear that comment? Okay, well,
Second time ought to be a challenge. Okay, if you have a cemetery on your property, usually they are for specific families. The public cannot be buried there, so it's considered a burial ground. And where Lee Hill, Old Parish, and then the Clay Lane coming on will be a cemetery where the public, anybody can be buried there. You buy a plot and you can be buried there. That is the difference between having a fence and not having a fence. As I understand the state law, a cemetery needs to have a fence around it. Burial grounds may not need to have that. I do not know that part of the answer.
Mr. Moderator?
yes.
Just with regard to the state RSA, that came about many, many years ago, and it was specifically crafted, my understanding is, due to foraging hogs. New England towns let their hogs roam. The position is actually vacant in Lee, but you can have a hog reeve in town. I believe Lee still has one on the books, and the hog reeve's responsibility is to make sure that foraging roaming hogs are wearing yokes and are not able to get into cemeteries.
This might be a great opportunity to bring this up to our legislative body and ask for some changes.
Well, next year we'll consider that hog reeve position. And Chuck, you can get into any of those cemeteries you damn please when you go. Okay, Article 13. Any further discussion of Article 13? Hearing no further discussion of Article 13, I'm going to ask that it is transferred to the official ballot as amended. And we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13. All those in favor? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of reconsideration of Article 15, restricting reconsideration of Article 13, please signify by raising your voter card. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Reconsideration of Article 13 is restricted. Article 14. Katrin.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be deposited into Internal Service Expendable Trust Fund for accrued benefits. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimated tax rate impact of 2 cents.
Comment?
It's fun as the hog.
Any discussion of Article 14? Comments, questions, discussion, Article 14? Seeing no further discussion, we'll ask that Article 14 be transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk. And we'll look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 14.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to restrict reconsideration. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. Article 14 is restricted. Article 15. I think we have Rebecca next to this one.
Warrant Article 15, the Contingency Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a contingency fund for fiscal year 2025 for unanticipated expenses that may arise and further to raise and appropriate $20,000 to go into said fund. The sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from general taxation. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. The governing body shall annually establish a detailed report of all expenditures from said fund. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact $0. So this fund, if something comes up over the course of the year that's not in the budget, with a little bit of wiggle room so that, the ceiling explodes, we can fix it.
This $20,000 worth.
$20,000.
Discussion or questions for Article 15? Seeing no further debate or discussion on Article 15, we'll ask that Article 15 is transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk as is, as written. And we look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 15.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 15. All those in favor, raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Article 15 is restricted. Article 16, Katrin.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be deposited into the reevaluation capital reserve fund. The select board recommends this article, majority vote required, estimated tax rate impact of a penny. This is just so that when we have our revaluations, we have paid a little bit each year, and that way it doesn't go up and down in prices. It's something we have to do every 5 years. Yes, every 5 years.
Any discussion of Article 16?
Chuck Fox, 36 Captain Smith Emerson Road. I guess this is Article 16 and all the previous ones. I think there's going to be a voter's guide or something put out. I guess I feel that we're sitting here, I think people may have ideas on these things, but it doesn't feel like we are in a discussion of people to decide these things. We've got to know these ins and outs, and to talk between 30, 40 people here when we've got how many thousand people voting, I think it's a real problem. And I hope that the voter guide will cover the different sides of these issues. I don't know how that gets done, but I think we've lost something in our, we've seen the attendance at the deliberative sessions each year going down and down, and I think it's because we don't really have much power or much say in what's happening. So I think this is just something we need to consider, going forward. How can we better communicate with one another and make informed decisions rather than people just coming and saying, oh, I'm not going to vote for anything, or they don't know what the issues are. Just my statement at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any indication there will be a voter's guide put out? Yep.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, we will definitely be putting out a voter's guide, and that will have a piece of narrative under each warrant article, not advocating for or against, but explaining what indeed the warrant article is and what effect it will have. With regard to this one, as Katrin mentioned, we're on a 5-year revaluation cycle. You may recall that Lee's last revaluation was in 2021, so we've got another couple of years to go, but this will go out to bid. Various revaluation firms will have the opportunity to bid on the contract. It's estimated that it would be in the vicinity of $50,000 to do the revaluation when it next comes around. So that's what the Capital Reserve Fund is for, just to incrementally build enough money to pay for the revaluation that we're required to do by state law.
Can I add something as well?
Certainly.
We start working on this budget in September, and I would just like to invite anyone out there to come and join us on these conversations, because there's only so much we can do the amendments and so many things we do with the warrant articles at the deliberative session. The best time to join us is at those select board meetings when these decisions are being made, and I will personally invite you to every single one, or as many as you can attend. The more people that are part of this process, the better the decisions that we make are. So that will be important.
Thank you. Important information there. Thank you, Chuck, for reminding us always that we could do better as far as getting our whole town incorporated, involved, and engaged in many ways. Sir.
John Tappan, I just wanted to respond to the previous comment. If you don't show up at the select board meetings when they're going over this, then when you come to vote on the ballot, all you get to do is pick an item from a menu. But if you show up at the select board meetings, you get to decide what items go on the menu. And that's, if you really care about it, that's where you should be.
Thank you. So true.
Thanks, John. Further discussion on Article 16. Hearing no further discussion on Article 16, and ask that Article 16 be transferred to the official ballot by the town clerk. And we look for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 16.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 16. All those in favor, raise your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. Article 16 is restricted. Article 17. Rebecca.
Warrant Article 17, the Annex Building Lease. To see if the town will vote to lease through the Select Board and under the provisions of RSA 41:11, the Annex Building located at 13 Mast Road to the Lee Historical Society, a private and independent not-for-profit organization, herein after referred to as the Historical Society. Select Board shall reserve the right to discontinue this agreement with 30 days' notice in the event the building and grounds are needed for municipal, governmental, transportation, or other reasons as required in the interest of the public good. Select Board shall require no rent or lease payment for the use of the building. The Select Board, at its discretion, may require cost sharing for electrical, heating, and cooling utilities with 60 days' notice to the Historical Society. Select Board shall provide basic landscaping service and snow removal. Other provisions to be included in the lease at the Select Board's discretion. Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact of $0.
Anything to comment on?
Mr. Moderator?
Yeah.
Or,
The Historical Society has been using two different buildings, and previously it asked us if they could use the annex for some of their exhibits that could no longer be housed in the other building. This just kind of codifies that relationship between the town and the Historical Society, because the Historical Society actually isn't part of the governmental body. They are their own not-for-profit organization, and so we need to have a little bit more agreement between the two groups before we just say, yeah, take the building. So this is allowing the town folks to recognize and agree that the Select Board should continue allowing the Historical Society to use the annex.
More comment?
sure. And actually, as Select Person Hawthorne said, this codifies the relationship, but it's actually required by state law. Select Person Casper had done a little legwork and spoke with the Municipal Association and referred me to their legal department. And if you're doing more than a short-term or temporary use of a building, that needs to be voted on by the town body, particularly if it's more than 12 months. So as this is seen as more than a 12-month agreement, it really needed by state RSA to come to the voters to decide. The other thing I'd mention, and the board has gone back and forth about this, is that there clearly is a value to the property. The select board has elected not to charge rent or lease at this point, but there was some work done. That building could be leased or rented to another entity that was not a not-for-profit and could potentially generate some income. So that was another reason the board wanted to put it out there as a warrant article, just to raise awareness in addition to meet the RSA.
Questions or comments on Article 17, please?
Trevor Shanda, 18 Hill Farm Road. I just have a question. Is the same agreement in place for the train station that they also occupy?
It is not, and I believe the train station is different. And someone that's been in Lee longer than myself will have to refresh my mind. Either in the 60s or late 50s, the train station was gifted to the Historical Society, and the town agreed to allow it to be located where it is. But I believe the Historical Association was actually the recipient, at least initially, of the building, and the town meeting did decide that they could place it where they did, and there was, at the very least, a memorandum of understanding between the town and the Historical Society when that was placed. And I think John actually probably has more specifics and detail than I do.
John Tappan, I actually don't have enough, but the Historical Society was the owner. I believe that they did actually pay for it, though it was a very nominal amount. And then this Historical Society donated it to the town with understandings about where it was placed and how it was cared for.
Thank you, John and Andy. Other questions or discussion on Article 17? Be real close, real close.
Real close. Ogzowski, 46 Lamprey Lane. You know, each year we get to this part of the warrant, and here we are, discussing something that has a number of aspects to it. So, relative to the depot, it sounds like, listening to Mr. Tappan, that we own the building.
I think you do at this point, yes.
Okay, so...
On it for a buck, yeah.
Probably. And the deeds are traceable, I guess, and that arrangement's traceable, and that we're paying our insurance coverage is covering that building.
Our insurance coverage covers both buildings, the freight building and the annex building.
Okay, that was my next question. And in reading this agreement, well, first of all, back to depot, we're covering the utilities on the depot.
We are at this point, and it's an interesting situation. The annex is heated, the depot isn't. There is a propane tank between the library, the town hall, the annex, and the museum that serves the number of those buildings that are heated. I believe they do have separate electric meters, but the town is paying those. The library reimburses us for their usage.
Mr. Moderator, this does, I'm going to digress, look like I'm digressing, but I'm not. And then there's the tramp shed.
Yes.
Who owns the tramp shed?
The town owns the tramp, hobo, equipment, whatever it's been called, shed, and we also insure it. And we also pay for the electricity.
Okay, so this is really the first formal agreement we'll have with the Historical Society.
I believe there is a documented agreement from the freight building, both when the Historical Society bought it and when the Historical Society donated it to the town. I believe the town voted to accept it, and there was a memorandum of understanding that went with that.
Similar to this one?
That I'm not sure.
Okay. I just have being a language guy, I have a language question about the way this is worded. It's that third sentence, I think. The select board shall reserve the right to discontinue this agreement with 30 days notice in the event the building and the grounds, et cetera, et cetera. I'm trying to understand 30 days notice. When does the clock start ticking on that? From the moment this is approved? If it is approved.
If this is I'm not, I guess, understanding the question, when will the clock start ticking on the 30 days? Or the...
Yeah, I'm trying to understand whether that's worded correctly, whether we're actually talking about 30 days from any point in future time, or whether we're talking about 30 days from the acceptance, the approval.
No, I think the understanding was 30 days from any day moving forward.
So do we need additional language, or is it?
Oh, I think, I didn't want to butt in here, but it says 30 days notice. That implies that a notice will be issued to me.
30 days prior to when the select board would need the property.
Okay. So I think all my questions have been answered. Just one more comment, and then there's the parsonage. Okay, which is dotted structure out there. And which is certainly on people's minds in some cases, in some circles. This is a pretty formal agreement. And so it sets precedent, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Paul. Further discussion on Article 17? Thank you.
Eric Johnson, 43 Demerit Avenue. I'm wondering, the language mentions the building. I'm wondering if we need language with respect to the land as well. If the answer is yes, then do we also need it for where the train depot is?
Good question. Anybody want to tackle it?
The legal opinion that I received from the New Hampshire Municipal Association referenced exclusively the building. It did not reference the land. So that's why this is worded the way it is. It was on advice of Natch Gray's recommendation from the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did find, I know we did this discussion, so in 1977, the original warrant article with regards to the railroad building was to see what action the town wishes to take regarding the acceptance of the Old South Lee Railroad building for a town museum as a gift from the Historical Society, with the society managing said building and assuming financial responsibility for the building's maintenance for as long as the society exists. That was the original warrant article language we could up from 1977.
Even though the maintenance is not paid for by the Historical Society.
Any further discussion on Article 17, please?
Deb Sugarman, 135 Stepping Stone Road. So what I heard you say was that you're hopefully planning on using maybe that building, other buildings, as an income source, possibly, maybe.
This would take that away. That would take that off the table. So it wouldn't be a revenue maker because we've chosen the nonprofit. It's the Lee Historical Society, where if they didn't exist, we could use that as a revenue source.
Well, so my question is, why not say, take out the Lee Historical Society and just say, we're going to make a lease to whoever we decide, and then we'll make the, I'm not being very clear, but.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but again, this comes back to the state RSA requiring agreement for anything other than short-term use of the building and legal advice. This really codifies the agreement between the Historical Society and the town. And if you decided to lease it to somebody else, we would come back with a very similar warrant article with whoever was next in line in that position, but it has to name the entity that is actually entering into the lease with the town.
The way it's been previously is that the select board kind of decides and then allows, and things have been happening. And what this says is that the taxpayers get to say, I want my taxpayer money to go to giving this free lease to the Historical Society, understanding the cost that has and the possible revenue loss. This is a choice we're making. And so that way, this specifically with the Lee Historical Society can be chosen.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion on Article 17? Mr. Gibson.
So the way I read this, the select board shall reserve the right to discontinue this agreement within 30 days notice in the event the building and grounds are needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's sort of part of what Paul was saying when he addressed it as well. But to me, my reason for standing here is 30 days is inadequate notice to pack up a building and move out. I think we're all in agreement, hopefully. I would like to see that changed to a minimum of 90 days, and if somebody else has some other proposal, that's great. But I'm thinking of the quantity of artifacts that are in that building, the logistics of moving, possibly the age of many of the members who are active in that society still, and trying to get things figured out where it's going to go.
So are you making an amendment?
I guess I am.
Okay.
I would like to see that change from 30 days to 90 days.
Okay, so now we'll submit that amendment in writing, and you can just make a note on your copy and give it to the town clerk. Is there support for this amendment? Is there a second for this amendment? We have a second for the amendment. And if you would please, hand your paperwork to the town clerk. Any discussion of the amendment to Article 17? Is it clear what's being proposed? Okay, no further discussion on the amendment. I'm going to ask the town clerk to read the article as amended. Make you work for us today.
Okay, Article 17. To see if the town will vote to lease through the Select Board and under the provisions of RSA 4111, the Annex building located at 13 Mass Road to the Helene Historical Society, a private and independent not-for-profit organization hereinafter referred to as the Historical Society. The Select Board shall reserve the right to discontinue this agreement with 90 days' notice in the event the building and grounds are needed for municipal, governmental, transportation, or other reasons as required in the interests of the public good. The Select Board shall require no rent or lease payment for the use of this building. The Select Board, at its discretion, may require cost sharing for electrical, heating, and cooling utilities with 60 days' notice to the Historical Society. The Select Board shall provide basic landscaping service and snow removal. Other provisions to be included in the lease at the Select Board's discretion. The Select Board recommends this article. Majority vote required.
Thank you. Any discussion of the amendment? Please, John.
John Tappan. I certainly agree that 30 days is too short, especially considering that the Select Board normally only meets once every 2 weeks. So if they would make a decision and there was just 30 days notice, there would be very little time for the Historical Society to come back with some other proposal.
Thank you. Other discussion around Article 17? All right, we'll vote on the amendment to Article 17. All those in favor of amending Article 17, please signify by raising your voter cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voter cards. Thank you. The motion passes to amend Article 17. Is there further discussion on Article 17 as amended? Seeing no further discussion, we'll ask that Article 17 be transferred to the official ballot as amended to the town clerk, and we'll ask for a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 17.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 17. All those in favor, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. And all those opposed, please raise your voter cards. Thank you. It brings us to the conclusion of our articles and time to discuss any further business that comes before this body. But before you bolt, I'd like to thank our town administrators and our assistant town administrator, our board of selectmen, and our town clerk for doing an excellent job of putting things together for us. And I understand one of the select board is not running again.
That's correct.
And that would be Katrin. So I really appreciate the fact that over the last number of years she's put in a lot of time into this, and I would appreciate if we all thank her with a round of applause. And also be it resolved that way in the back of the room, where we always find Marion Kelsey, where we always find her in the back of the room and at every meeting and everything we do in this town, for 30 years, Marion Kelsey has been the supervisor of the checklist in this town. And she did not put her name forward for re-election. And so it saddens me, and I hope all of you, that we won't have her skillful rendering of the checklist It's been said, I think we heard her say one time, if you mess with the list, she'll be pissed. But Marion, thank you for 30 years. So, and we will reconvene this body at our polling place on March 12th for the second session of the town voting. Thank you very much.